Hey everyone, this is Rodrigo Silveira with EasyLearnTutorial.com, and this is tutorial number 4 of our Google Web Toolkit tutorial series. And in this tutorial, just following the game plan for this series, we are going to do a Hello World demonstration. And as you know already, GWT is not the best tool that you want to use for a very trivial HTML application. If you're only going to use it for something that you could easily do, using Notepad or something that's simple and not really complex, then you probably don't want to use GWT. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to be showing you how to set up a new project. And the main thing I want to show you is the browser plugin that you're going to need and how to run it from Eclipse. So let's get started. First thing you need to do is pull up your Eclipse. Hopefully you already have your Google plugins set up in Eclipse. If you don't, check out the previous tutorial. What we're going to do, there's 3 ways to start a new project. You can just go to File, New, Project. If you don't see it here, you can go to Other and choose New Project. Or you can just click this thing right here in the plugin button that it creates for you. I don't like this method because this option right here, sample code, it doesn't always show, and that's really important. And you can just right click your projects right here and do the same thing, create new project. And if you go this way, you need to go down to find inside the options here where it says Google and choose web application project. I'm just going to do it using this option just because that's why we installed the plugin right there. And if you don't see this option right here, it could be that this thing is not stretched out. It's like, where's everything? Just make sure you stretch the window. What we're going to do is, first thing is just create a project name, and I'm just going to call this thing ELT for Easy Learn Tutorials, GWT Tutorials. And then the package name, if you don't know a whole lot about Java packages, check out my video that I've done explaining it. There's a link for it in the description of the video. But in my case, I'll just call it com.easylearntutorial singular .gwt, and that's all. And then the location is right here. This is where you can check for your SDK. If you just downloaded everything from Eclipse, you might only have one, so you only have one option. But if you download the SDK from the website separately, you can add a bunch of them, and then you can choose different versions. I'm just going to use 2.4, which is the latest, so I'll check that one. We're not going to be using App Engine right now, so make sure you uncheck this thing. And then make sure you uncheck also where it says sample code. Uncheck that, make sure it's not here. If you choose generate a sample project, it's going to create this whole thing that just says hello, but it does like servlets and a bunch of extra stuff that we don't need right now. So uncheck it. We're going to create an empty project. So click that. It's going to take a little bit, and eventually our project will show over here. And all we're going to have is basically a source folder right here and war. Inside war, we're going to have webinf, which is for your servlet stuff. If you're not familiar with that, that's fine. We're not going to use it. Inside here, the only package we have is our main package that we created and nothing in it. So the first step now, or the next step, right click the package, choose new, other, and find Google Web Toolkit down here. Or you can just type it. Maybe it needs to be the right case. Actually, what we need to type is module, is what we're going to create. So either you search for Google Web Toolkit down here, should be somewhere over here, and we're going to create a new module, or like I said, you can just type in the word module, and that's what we want. Click next. Make sure it goes in our package that we created inside the source folder. Should be the default. Only thing you really need to name is the module. Next tutorial, I'll be explaining the module. So for now, let's just call it Hello World. That's fine. Click finish. It's going to create 2 things for us. A new package called client inside, or it's a sub package. And then inside the root package is going to create this package name .gwt.xml. And this is going to be, it's called the manifest. It just basically explains our application. And the most important thing, we don't have it right now, but it's going to define the entry point. It's like where to begin the application when we run it. So two things we're going to do. One, right away we're going to rename the module. So inside the module node, go ahead and add an attribute called rename dash 2 equals quotes, and we're going to call it hello. And I'll explain why I'm doing this. This is helpful, but not it's not mandatory. It's optional, but you should do it because it's helpful. Next thing, right click the subpackage.client, choose new, other, and we're going to create an entry point class. Again, you can just type that in here, entry point, but we're just going to Google Web Toolkit and choosing an entry point class. Choose that, click next. Again, make sure it's inside your package. That's the client package that we created. The module name refers to this guy right here, so that should be the default. But if you have multiple packages or multiple modules, you can select them from here by clicking browse. So pretty much this should be default. Only thing you worry about is the name. I'm going to call this guy home. You can name it anything really. You could even name it hello, but home. I just want it to be a different name so you don't get it confused with the module name. And this is just a plain old Java class. When you create a new class this way, it's going to change your manifest, and it's adding this thing right here. Since we created a new entry point, it added the entry point, which is the first thing that will be executed when this module loads. Again, for more information, check out the next video where I explain all the details here. And this is where the class is. Fully qualified name. So this is just basically a regular Java class. Only special thing is that it implements this interface entry point. And it has this this function that's pretty much like your main. It's the first thing that gets executed, and that's what we need to create. All we're going to do in here is type root panel, and if you don't have the package imported, it's okay, just keep writing. It's root panel.get, and it will probably import it for you manually, or you can press Ctrl-Shift-O and it's going to organize your imports. So root panel.get.add, and we're going to just add a new label, and the text in the label will be hello world exclamation mark. And you're going to have to import label, and there's a bunch of possible options. I just normally press Ctrl-Shift-O, and you just use a little bit of common sense. Where could this package possibly be coming from? The only thing that really makes sense is Google GWT, and label is like it's a UI element. It's something we're going to be displaying, so it makes a lot of sense that it's this top one, and that's what it should be. User.client.ui.label is the package, so import that, and we're good to go. Last thing we need to do is have what it's called a host HTML file. To do that, you go to war directory, right click it, new, other, and then again, this is just an HTML file, so you don't have to use the Google Web Toolkit version HTML page, but this is helpful to choose this version, this option, instead of just a regular file and name it .html, and I'll show you why. So make sure it's in your war directory and in your project. I'm just going to call this guy index.html. Call it whatever you want. And then there's an option right here. Make sure you always stretch this thing so it doesn't hide possible options. The option that it says right here is support for browser history. We don't want it, so just delete it. And it's just going to add a line of HTML. Go ahead and click finish. So this is what you should get. It's just a regular HTML file. One thing I want to point out, if you're adding new things to your project and you're using this Google Web Toolkit options, this is what's recommended, because anything you change in your project, you need to know how that affects the rest of the project. So for instance, when we created the entry point, you should have known that that would require this new line in your manifest. If you let Eclipse do it for you, you don't have to worry about it, and it avoids the chance of you making a mistake. Same thing with the HTML file. If you just create a brand new regular HTML, just saying file and just go a regular file, and just name it .html, you would need to add this line right here by yourself. And this is a trivial JavaScript import. But this is what you need to know is how to import the JavaScript, or what the path would be that refers to this class right here. And basically the class, or the path to your class, your entry point, is the fully qualified name of your class. So it would be com EasyLearn Tutorial GWT client dot home would be over here, this whole thing, slash the name of your the entry point, the name of the module rather, which is hello dot nocache.js. By renaming it to hello, then the path to it is simply hello is the name of the module, and then hello again, it's the same thing twice, hello.nocache.js. That refers to this module right here, which behind the scenes refers to your, or the first thing it's going to load is your entry point, and that's why it needs the fully qualified name of the file, which is right here. So what will happen, and I will explain this in more details, when you load this page, it's going to look for this file right here. Since we're not compiling the project to have the file over here, then the magic of the GWT plugin and the servers that it uses will come into play, and it's basically going to convert this thing in real time. It's going to compile it to bytecode and send it to our HTML. For that, you're going to need a plugin for your browser, and Chrome obviously has a plugin for it, and Firefox has one, maybe even IE. But if you're running Chrome, which is what I recommend just so you can follow the tutorials, go to your Chrome web store and then do a search for Google Web Toolkit. And what you need, let's just say GWT plugin. I'll have a link directly to the plugin. Well, if you can't find it like I failed right now, what we need to do now that we have the host page, the module, and the entry point is to run the entry point. And for that, we just run the project. One thing I want to show you before you run it, we're just going to run this configuration. Sometimes, what Eclipse is going to do is create a little server, instantiate it, and run a project on the server. But sometimes that fails because it tries to run on the same port, like a default port. So what I want you to do is click on this little arrow next to this little blue icon that runs, or go to run and then find where it says run configurations, or click the little arrow and go run configurations. Find your project name. So right now my project is ELT GWT tutorials. You can type that in here and it will show your project, or you can just go through this list of options right here, and we're looking for a web application and then the name of our project. Click that and then it will show you all these options here. What you want to do is go to servers, and like I said, Eclipse will create a server, instantiate it, and try to run on port 8888. If for some reason you have some program in your system that's running on this port, or that has reserved the port, then Eclipse will crash. It won't crash, but your application here will not run. So what I like to do just to avoid that is to automatically choose unselected port. So Eclipse is going to choose a port that is guaranteed to be available, and then do the same thing under GWT over here, automatically select and use port. So make sure those two tabs or checkboxes are checked. Click apply and then run. And if you click run and then you get errors in the console or nothing happens over here, usually you should have a URL over here. That's where we're going to run the project. If that doesn't happen and you get little errors here, then go ahead and click run. Make sure the entry point class is what's selected. Click run. And then it should give you this thing first. And this is an indication. If you don't see this thing, it's an indication that something is probably going wrong. What you want to do is just choose the first one, web application. And don't choose this one. Choose the one that doesn't mention servers or anything. And then this should, if everything is right, you can see the status under console and stuff. It logs everything. But eventually here you should see the port or the address. Right now it's giving me 8888 and the 9997, which is fine. I don't know why it reverted from my run configurations. Let me just double check these two guys. That was kind of weird. So apply, and then go ahead and run again. It will show you now it's a different port. If you just double click it, and let me shrink my window in case you can't see it. If you double click this thing, it's going to open on the default browser, or you can choose a different browser, or I usually just copy it and go to my browser over here and load it. If you don't have the plugin for the browser you're using, you're going to get this thing right here. Go ahead and just click this thing. It will take you to the proper location. Add it to Google Chrome. Yes, it will do its thing. And down here, it's going to download it and install it for you. And when it's installed and everything is good, and obviously you only have to do it once. When it's installed, or if it's already installed, when you try to run a GWT application, and make sure when you're trying to run these URLs, go back to Eclipse and development. Make sure this thing is red, meaning that it's running, and you can turn it off. When you try to go to the URL, you're going to get the little icon over here. If it shows a little warning saying you need to enable it, just click enable. If needed, refresh, and then eventually it's going to load. And this is all we're going to get in this tutorial. Pretty simple, but this is a label widget that comes with GWT, and you can see it's just a div that has all this stuff. If you look at network, let me refresh it. It's downloading the no cache, and it's showing, this just shows the GWT magic, how it compiles things from bytecode into highly optimized JavaScript. And then it downloads some other things that we won't get into in this tutorial. But for all practical purposes, this is the hello world. It's a lot of work for just a simple string like that. But just before I let you go, the last thing I want to show you is something that's really cool about GWT. Normally, if you're running things on a server and you're deploying it and compiling it, you have to recompile stuff and run it again and so on and so forth. In GWT, we can just make changes to the project. So for instance, I'm going to take this label definition out here, and I'm going to have a private label, maybe just MSG for message equals new label. And then that's what I'm going to pass into my panel like that. Make sure there's no errors. So you don't have to try to recompile it, stop the server. The server is running already, so you can just go back to Eclipse, refresh, and obviously nothing changed. But if I change this and say hello world, and like that, you will get, you get updates in real time. One thing is you don't need to, or one thing I was going to say, the first time you first open the URL, it might take a while to load everything. But then after that, if you just leave your browser running and leave the project running, then any refreshes would be pretty easy. It would be pretty fast. One thing is if you crash something, if you have a mistake, like your Java won't compile, and then you try to refresh it, you're going to get some sort of exception just saying, something's broke. If you throw an exception, this right now is a syntax error. So it won't display anything here. It would just say the server is messed up. But if you throw an actual exception, you're going to get the stack trace right here. That's helpful. But you can always go to your Eclipse, and this will tell you what the problem is. And in this case, it would just say syntax on line 9, insert a semicolon. So you do so, save it, refresh, and life is good again. So pretty simple tutorial, I know. A lot of steps, but some of the gotchas that I think are important. So next tutorial, we're going to explain the widgets, entry point, the manifest, the host page, everything. So be sure to check that out. Please like this video if this was helpful. Post your questions and comments with this video, and be sure to subscribe. Thank you very much.